So books and art, two of my lifelong passions, joined together by Daniela over at the channel Uncommon Reader. So Daniela has put together this fantastic tag for us booktubers called the Books and Art tag to celebrate her first channelversary. So happy channelversary, Daniela, and thank you for all the lovely content that you bring. It's been a joy discovering your channel, and I thought I would join in with this tag. Now, I've seen this tag also responded to by the wonderful Philip Hall. And Philip Hall used this tag to talk about art and also to share some art books, and that inspired me. I'm going to do the same. So we've got 8 prompts, all focused around art, famous paintings, and the question posed is, what book or books does this piece of art inspire? So I'm going to bring you fiction, I'm going to bring you poetry, I'm also going to bring you art books that have all been inspired by Daniela's choice of paintings. So we've got prompt number 1. So for this one, Daniela picked the painting Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich, and the theme around this amazing painting is solitude. So what does that painting inspire? What books do I have on my shelves that are inspired by that and the theme of solitude? And for me, I went for my art books about Georgia O'Keeffe and her artwork. Georgia O'Keeffe is one of my all-time favourite artists. I will often use the phrase in my head when life gets tough, what would Georgia do? It's always in there in the back of my head. Now, Georgia was quite a woman, and she was very at one with solitude, because later in life she moved to the desert areas of America just because she was blown away by the scenery and the solitude. And I think some of these pictures in the books that I've got of her and her artwork show that, and you can see it in the artwork itself. You can see it in the landscape that she lived in, both in the natural landscape and also in the very stark, barren, physical and concrete landscape of the homes that she lived in. Of course, her paintings are very famous for the bones. She would go out into the wilderness alone in the heat and collect bones and skeletal remains of animals lying around and bring them home and paint those in her studio right on the edge of the desert. She would also paint in her car. She ripped the front seats out of her car and would often paint in that incredible heat inside her car as well. But she was very much an artist that worked and sought out that solitude. A lot of her life, when she played with the idea of scale, she lived in towns. She was for a while had a partner, but in later life she became more and more enraptured with the idea of solitude, and that's where these incredible images come from. And I just think that bravery to take solitude and passion and a calling to art and just to fully commit to it is what I find so inspiring about Georgia O'Keeffe's work. There is a boldness, I think, and a bravery in that many of us find incredibly difficult to embrace. And I think that boldness, especially as a single mom now, getting older with a special needs child, it is a boldness and a bravery that I have felt at times has been imposed on me as a personal desert, and that's why I often find myself thinking, what would Georgia do? Now in June, I've got a Juicy June prompt where I read big books. I'm having my 3rd attempt to complete the Roxana Robinson biography of Georgia O'Keeffe, A Life Georgia O'Keeffe. It is quite a book. I have nearly finished this, twice, so this will be a third reread. I always get distracted at the end of the book, so I really do want to give this a third go and to finish this book this year. So that's another great book. This is a great biography if you are interested in her work, although it is huge. I also want to share my favourite read of the year so far, possibly my all-time favourite book ever. This one might have pushed Wuthering Heights off the top spot. This was a February read this year. As you can see, it's tabbed to death. This is Charlotte Bronte's Villette, and this, if you want a book that will tear your heart out around the themes of solitude and loneliness, Charlotte Bronte's Villette is a book that will do it. This book saw me sobbing at times. It literally broke me, this book. There are some parts of this book where the character in here is so lonely, wandering the streets of another country, that it is heartbreaking. It's a book of loneliness. It's a study of loneliness, unrequited love. It has Gothic elements in there. It hasn't left me, it stayed with me. It is haunting my days, Villette, and it is marvellous. So if you want a fiction book all around the idea of solitude, then Villette is definitely the one for you. The next prompt number 2, uses the painting Cherubs by Raphael, and in this one we are asked to work around the prompt of supernatural protagonist. Now, my art book for this is a textile artist that I love. This is the textile art of Alice Kettle, Art of the Needle. Now, my degree is in fine art constructed textiles, so anything to do with embroidery or textiles or texture, for me, I adore. And Alice Kettle is one of my all-time favourite textile artists. She creates absolutely huge textile embroideries like this one, and her figures do have a very supernatural feel to them, simply I think because of the medium of stitching, machine stitching, in which they are produced. It reminds me a little bit of Chagall. The figures almost seem to float through the air like ghosts. It does have almost that supernatural protagonist feel about it. Here, the sort of size of her embroideries, these are not just tiny little framed embroideries. These are huge wall covering embroideries that are just spectacular. I love the work of Alice Kettle, so if you like textile art, this is a great textile art book focusing on her work. However, I'm going to show you some books I've recently read. Most of these fiction books are books I've recently read that also have supernatural protagonists. So Anne Radcliffe, The Italian, a classic early Gothic masterpiece. I read this as well in February, although it might not necessarily be the protagonist that's supernatural. The monk that is in the book is throughout the book, and it's very supernatural. It leaves you wondering right to the very end what on earth is going on. It's got fabulous Gothic settings, monasteries where people are held captive up in the mountains with vast landscapes. It is a fantastic Gothic read with the supernatural threaded through it. This was a book I read last November, The Woman in Black. Of course, you've got a supernatural protagonist in this. Really scary. Again, another fantastic remote Gothic setting with this house cut off by an estuary on repeat, a cemetery in the garden, a woman in black appearing. This had me quaking reading. This pushed me right to the edge of my comfort zone for reading, and I loved it. One of my favourite reads so far this year was the very first time I ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula, another February read. I loved this. This has been the most surprising book I've read this year, told through letters and journal entries, of course. I just thought it was a spectacular read and I loved it. And then one that I reread often is Grief is the Thing with Feathers. This is a Max Porter book. This is read kind of through poetry. It's kind of poetry and extracts which tell the story of a mother who has died. So it's all focused around this mom. She's died, and then a crow appears to the family to support them through the grief, the father and the young sons. It's a beautiful book, beautiful read. Grief is the Thing with Feathers. So supernatural protagonists for prompt 2. So prompt number 3 uses the painting Moscow by Kandinsky, this bright, colourful landscape that talks about the dystopic. And that is the prompt for prompt number 3, something that is dystopic. And my mind immediately went to Geiger, because this is very futuristic, very dystopic. Of course, you've got links around aliens, you've got this strange, mechanical, scary world. I used to absolutely adore this type of dystopic art. I went through a whole series of time where the airbrush was like my everything in my art. I absolutely loved airbrushed art. I still think this sort of art is absolutely incredible. It is very futuristic, very terrifying. I would never have thought that this would be my type of thing, but for some strange reason I have always loved it, especially that strange sort of Gothic portraiture aspect of this work. I love the way that machinery and machine parts is used as inspiration. It is not without its challenges as well, especially the way the female form can sometimes be treated. So it isn't completely non-problematic, but I think the amount of imagination that is held in this is just so fabulous. It is confronting. It isn't twee, flowers and gardens artwork. It is very dystopic. I think any dystopic artwork does present that challenging aspect that is difficult to confront. So I don't read, I think Philip said the same, he doesn't read a lot of this type of fiction, and neither do I. So I thought about the things I'd got, and I thought the same thing that Philip did. I'm certain that Philip chose a Margaret Atwood, and I too picked up one of my all-time favourite Margaret Atwood books, The Handmaid's Tale, which I've just recently replaced with this charity shop copy. But I can remember reading The Handmaid's Tale when I was 19 on the tube in London, and crying on the tube in London reading it. Now, what Margaret Atwood does with her work, she gets an idea from current news events, and she basically imagines that news event taken to its extremity. So you get like the book trilogy Onyx and Crake, which I've read those, but I don't have those anymore, unfortunately, where climate change and the end of the world and viruses let loose bring about a dystopian world where gardeners are the new army. I mean, you can see where she has taken a news event and just expanded it. And The Handmaid's Tale, the scary thing is we seem to be moving more towards Margaret Atwood's versions of these stories than away. And I would say that's quite a call to pick up some Margaret Atwood if you've never read her writing, and read it, because it seems to be a manual of the future, scarily. So any Margaret Atwood, I would say, is fantastic to read. A read I read in January, if you're not quite up to that level of dystopia, is fairy tales, because you've got new worlds in these. For the Wolf by Hannah Witten is the first part of a duology where Red has her world end and a new world order begin inside a magical forest where she is sacrificed to the wolf, but things don't turn out as you would imagine. I loved this read. It was a great way to start the year. I got sent by one of you lovely lot the second part for The Throne, which is on my bookcase behind me waiting to be read, so thank you so much for that. You know who you are. So if a fairy tale kind of new world beginning and a world ending is to be found in this book. And also last November I read Ava Reid's A Study in Drowning. The setting of this book is very dystopian. It's very end of the world, where you're literally falling off the end of the world into the ocean. It is a book where the setting comes alive and you've got water and the ocean taking over this Gothic house. You've got strange beings, you've got, there's all sorts going on in here. It's a great Gothic story about the end of times, prophecy, and literally a setting that is the end of the world too. If you like Gothic fantasy, this one again, magical realism, Ava Reid, A Study in Drowning. I loved this one last November. Okay, prompt number 4 is the gorgeous painting by Berthe Morisot called The Cradle. I love this painting so much. The prompt for this one is books inspired by the idea of mother and child. I thought about a Gustav Klimt painting in this gorgeous book, Gustav Klimt and Women. This is a painting entitled Mother and Children. So you've got a lot of blank space here. You've got a mother and a child there. I just love the way that Klimt uses space. I love the way he uses pattern. He often balances his pattern, these extreme areas of pattern, with areas of quiet. And I just love that about Klimt. There are a lot of images here, not only of children, but also you've got the idea of life stages like the maiden, mother and crone. So you do have motherhood represented. You do have, like this piece is called The Virgins. You have the bride. You have different life stages for women in this book, which I love. In this one, which is entitled Death and Life, you can see not only the use of blank space against pattern, but also that idea of life stages again. You've got the child, you've got the mother, you've got crone, and you've got death waiting the other side of that blank space. Just love this about Klimt's work. So you've got incredible pieces like this one entitled Hope, which again speak of motherhood and pregnancy and waiting, and again you can see that blank space set against that patterned area, which is just so satisfying to look at. So Gustav Klimt, one of my favourite, I know a lot of people's favourite, and this is just a beautiful book of his artwork. So for mother and child, for recent reads, I read in January The Wolf Wilder by Catherine Rundell. This was a 5-star read for me. It follows the adventure of a mother and her daughter who are both wolf wilders, set in a plagued by war Russia. The mom gets arrested and the daughter goes on a mission with her pack of wolves and friends she meets along the way to save her mother. Although this is a middle grade book, it brought me to tears more than once. It doesn't mince any of the action, it doesn't water it down for kids. It is quite a read. Some animals do get killed, so that's a trigger warning in this. Like I say, it doesn't hold back, even though this is a middle grade book, but it is fabulous. It is a beautiful read and I really loved this one. Also last November I read The Ghost Woods by C.J. Cook. This I loved, another Gothic tale based around a home for unmarried mothers where they go to have their babies and then their babies get taken away from them. but there is something supernatural going on in this Gothic setting, surrounded by woods and mushrooms and a strange creature that appears. Mushrooms as characters, it happens in this book. The setting again is Gothic, it's creepy. It is very strongly a book about the bond between mother and child. It is heartbreaking at times, and a great read. So The Ghostwood. But one that I read to my son a few years back is one that really stays with me. This is Lara Williamson's The Boy Who Sailed the Ocean in an Armchair. This charts the story of a dad with his sons after his wife's death, and how the boys are coping with it, how the family cope. There are paper cranes in here that keep appearing. There are whispers from beyond the grave. And there is an ending that saw me and my son both sat sobbing together. Just a beautiful, really beautiful read that will stay with you. So that's Lara Williamson's The Boy Who Sailed the Ocean in an Armchair. Okay, prompt number 5 is The Glorious Picture, The Swing by Renoir. I think this is one of my favourite pictures that Daniela has chosen for the prompts. So we're going away from the mother and child prompt specifically and going more into a generic childhood prompt. Now, for me, one of my earliest artists that I ever got really interested in is the artwork of Peter Blake. So Peter Blake, if you don't know, uses kind of collections of childhood things. We've got the Owl and the Pussycat childhood stories feature. Here is the man himself here. Also badges. Now I grew up in the 80s. I was at school in the 80s where sort of heavy metal and denim jackets covered in band badges was a thing, and you can see on the front of this image on the front cover, badges feature a lot, and like collecting cards, that was a thing that went on in the 80s. We've got Scrabble tiles being used as well in the artwork. He did a series of pieces of art based on nursery rhymes. You can see here are some Humpty Dumpty artworks here, which I think are just amazing. And here again is his self-portrait with badges, very much using things that were iconic when I was a child and using like the popular culture of the era of when I was a child. I love Peter Blake's work for that. So Peter Blake is one artist that really reminds me of childhood. Also for childhood, I really wanted to talk about the amazing drawings of Castillo. I love this book of drawings. Now these drawings often feature childhood toys and also images of childhood. You've got children in here, you've got mother and child as well. It is very much a depiction of a childhood scene. I absolutely adore the way Castillo uses white space in his drawings and how he leaves parts of drawings incomplete. I love that. And again, you can see different aspects of childhood life brought into play here, what with pets or piano practice or toys or family members. It is very much an artwork that depicts images of childhood in the most incredible way. So Castillo is one of my all-time favourite artists, especially in regards to his drawing work. Two books that also really remind me of childhood. So first of all, the story Peter Pan, one of my all-time favourite stories. I've recently found this beautiful copy in a charity shop for 50 pence, which I just could not believe. So the story of Peter Pan. Now last December I went with a friend to Blenheim Palace to see Blenheim Palace kitted out for Peter Pan's 50th birthday, as a Peter Pan exhibition. It was absolutely incredible. We walked through and were just in wonder about it. We got to meet Captain Hook. We got to see all of the houses that feature in the book. We got to see the nursery where the children played before they went to Neverland. We got to see the mermaid pool. We got to see the Lost Boys as incredible Christmas decorations. It was just an amazing experience, and I reread Peter Pan last December to go along with that experience, and it just made me realise what an important story this is for me. My childhood favourites. It is full of childhood wonder, full of that magic of play and childhood before we grow up, and should we grow up, and how selfish are children and how selfish are adults to expect children to not to be children. There's a lot of layered themes in Peter Pan around the idea of childhood, and I just think it's marvellous. And again, this book, I read this book, so this is Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. This book I read this year, January, February and March, saw me reading this mammoth. I fell hook, line and sinker in love with David Copperfield, which charts David's life from literal birth all the way through to his adulthood. His childhood in this and the stories of his childhood are stories and their characters and their moments and their quotes that will stay with me forever. This book is worth every minute you put into it. It's worth every effort you take with it. It repays back 100-fold. This book is just sublime and wonderful. And if you haven't read any Dickens, although this is a big book, start with David Copperfield. It's just wonderful. Oh my gosh, I'm so running out of time here. Right, prompt number 6 is this amazing painting, American Gothic by Wood Grant. And the prompt from this is a rural place. I have gone for one of my favourite artists, Chagall. Well, all of these are my favourites, to be honest. Now, Chagall just has a way of capturing setting as only Chagall can. There are these floating characters around the images as well, with this sort of sumptuous colour palette. You've got everyday creatures turned into something magical and incredible. There is always something unexpected and dreamlike in these rural landscapes of Chagall. If you've not checked out the work of Chagall, then grab a book, go to your library, find a book and just soak in the dreamlike atmosphere. I love Chagall's work. And for me, a book that I read last month that for me feels like that sort of magical or otherworldly rural setting is Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, and you can see it on the front cover. What this book has as part of its setting and as part of its main plot development is quicksand on the edge of a coast, and you very rarely come across settings with quicksand in it, and it is a setting I think that will stay with me because of that, because of events in the book, because of the terror and the strangeness and the otherworldliness of quicksand, which is very similar to the otherworldliness of the work of Chagall in a different way. So a great Victorian sort of detective novel set around the missing jewel, the Moonstone. It brings in lots of different characters' points of view, different settings, not just rural settings, but it is the setting in this that still haunts my thoughts. So a rural setting, read The Moonstone. Prompt number 7 uses the self-portrait of Artemisia Gentileschi. I hope I have said that correctly, though I might not. So a self-portrait, and this prompt is a female protagonist. For me, the key female protagonist of my art love has to be the one and only Frida Kahlo, and I was incredibly lucky that I went to see this this exhibition of Frida Kahlo's life down in London a few years ago, and it was absolutely amazing. You don't have to go much further for a female art protagonist whose life is full of drama and intrigue and unbelief and a storyline like a grand tragic adventure in many ways. You don't have to look any further than Frida Kahlo, whose passion in art got her over some of the most difficult and terrible and unbelievable tragedies of life, from horrendous injury to illness to losing limbs to being bedridden to being cheated on to being betrayed by a sister. Oh, her life reads like a novel that's hard to believe. However, it is true life, and her art, which often focuses on self-portraiture and autobiographical approach to art, kind of charts all of this, and it's really powerful for that charting, right from her injuries and her need to wear braces and artificial limbs underneath her fantastic costumes, but also it charts her agony at childlessness as well. Frida Kahlo is just a lesson in how art can carry you through. For me as well, I still got this to read on my bookshelf. So this is Hayden Herrera's The Biography of Frida Kahlo. I want to get to this year if I can. But also one that I have read is The Diaries of Frida Kahlo, where you have these incredible pages of a diary. A lot of them art based, a lot of them writing based, which are then all translated in the back of the book. Incredible insight into the voracious imagination that never stopped of this incredible woman. So Frida Kahlo and the books of Frida Kahlo, just an amazing female protagonist. Okay, and finally, my favourite artist. Everybody I've shown is a favourite artist, to be honest. I do want to quickly touch on some favourite art movements though. For me, the Pre-Raphaelites is one of my all-time favourite art movements. Oh my gosh, I love this. I took my daughter at the end of last year to see the big Pre-Raphaelite collection that has just come back to its home in Birmingham in the UK, in Birmingham Art Museum and Gallery. Having done a world tour, both me and my daughter adored it. Birmingham has the biggest collection of Pre-Raphaelite art in the world, and we loved it. I love the paintings of Ophelia. This painting here of Ophelia is one of my all-time favourites, not only because of the painting itself and its link to Shakespeare, so go and read Hamlet if you are looking at Pre-Raphaelite art, but also because I helped my daughter put together a photo shoot of this very painting in our bath, and it worked so well. Her A-level art teacher didn't realise at first that it wasn't the actual painting, so that was quite a coup to pull that one off. And I also love any sort of folk art. I love the kind of naive, childish aspect, not only of the paintings, also of the ceramics, the sculptures, the patterns. Two artists I've got to end with are the incredible Maud Lewis, who was a disabled artist who, in not being able to get out of her house much, she just painted everything in her house, and she painted what she could see from her window as well. And what we have are the most glorious, happy filled, wonderful snapshots of life from the eyes of the incredible Maud Lewis. I just think her paintings are sublime. They're simple, they're naive. Like all folk art, it's got that kind of childlike aspect to it, but they are wonderful. They are just glorious. And in a similar vein, the work of Grandma Moses. Now, Grandma Moses, she did not pick up a paintbrush till she was in her 70s. So if any of you out there are thinking it is too late for me, I have missed the boat, I am too old, let Grandma Moses be a lesson to you that you are never ever too old to do something and explore something new, and to take on a new passion, and to learn again, and to follow your heart. You are never too old for that. Grandma Moses is the lesson in that. Look at these glorious paintings, these wonderful folk art paintings from such an amazing lady. Look, there she is. Grandma Moses, I salute you. So guys, that's my The Books and Art tag response. Thank you so much, Daniela, and happy first channelversary. It's really exciting to have found you. I'm still in my first few weeks of BookTube, so I can't imagine what it will be like when I've been on here a whole year, but a happy channelversary to you. Thank you as well to Philip as well for your beautiful response video, which I loved. I think I've watched that 3 times now, but that's my response, and I hope guys that you enjoyed it and it wasn't too long. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.